Hello, my name is Alicia Osborne, and I'm doing my speech on child abuse. First, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the kinds of child abuse and how they're measured, and then I'm going to tell you about how they affect the child. We have physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect. Physical is measured by shaking a child, beating them, hitting them, burning them, even biting them. Then you have emotional abuse, where you yell at them, put them down, or you blame them for things that aren't even their fault. And you have your sexual abuse, which is forcing them to engage in sexual acts or exposing them to age-inappropriate acts. Then you have neglect, the pattern of failure to provide for a child's needs. Two different types of neglect. You have physical neglect, which is not providing them with food, clothing, shelter, or even medical care. And the other neglect is emotional, where you don't give them affection, any attention, and even not supervising. How child abuse does affect a child is it goes with their emotional status. It affects their physical being, their behavior, their psychological aspects, their social, and their cognitive development. With the emotional status, it can make a child feel guilt, believe that they are the ones who caused the abuse, and they'll blame themselves for not stopping it. They'll grieve over losses, family and personally related. They'll enter a perplexed state of mind where they have conflicts towards their own parents. They'll have a difficult time expressing themselves, and they'll have a constant fear of abandonment and a constant fear of the unknown. They'll become depressed, feel helpless, and they'll be embarrassed of themselves. Then you have their behavior, where they'll go into a state where they're one or the other. Either they're aggressive or they're passive. Either they act out or they completely withdraw. They'll be overachievers or underachievers. They'll want to be at school all the time, or they won't want to ever go. This also with the behavior, they'll start to care about others more, be like a parent figure to their siblings, but they won't care for themselves as much because they don't see themselves being worth cared for. They'll even start like a regressive behavior, where they start having bedwetting problems, nightmares, sucking their thumb. And at school, they might even start to lose focus. Then you have your psychological aspects that are changed with child abuse. They'll start having somatic complaints, where everything that they complain about doesn't add up, even with checkups, like headaches and stomach aches, just things you can't explain. They'll have anxiety attacks, show uneasiness to most things, short attention spans, and sometimes they'll even start to have a lack of personal hygiene. Then you have your social development that gets affected by child abuse. They'll separate from their friends and family. Their relationships are usually very short, and they end as soon as they start. They'll have trust issues, like my interview with Jackie Osborne, who is a victim of child abuse. When she first got married, she couldn't even trust her own husband with her children because her father abused her. And they even have a hard time managing anger because they can't trust anyone to talk to. There's not much they can do. Worst scenario with social development is where the victim of child abuse actually engages in exploitative relationships where they're either the perpetrator or another victim to abuse. Then you have your cognitive development that gets affected. This is how a child starts to think and gain knowledge. Side effects of this abuse for cognitive development is they'll blame others for their problems and their behavior. And they'll start to see that violence might even be the answer because their abuser got what they wanted for abusing them. They don't believe what they're doing is wrong because that's how their example was set. They can also have a low self-concept and feel vulnerable and think that they are an inconvenience on others. After the abuse, there's other things that can be affecting the child. The fact that they have to hide a secret prevents them from having any real friends. That, like my interviewee, Jackie Osborne, said, "I was afraid to have friends come over because I was scared my dad would hurt them too, and I was ashamed." Even a child will start to avoid new things. They're not sure that these new things will trigger abuse, so they just avoid it altogether. And this isn't good because it makes a child lose their curiosity and wonder, and it doesn't help exercise their mind. And then you have your physical being that gets affected, because for one thing, from abuse causes stress. This is where your body reacts by causing atomic and endocrine hyperons. Stress can become very dangerous and a permanent psychological change. It makes someone overreact to any certain stimuli, from a memory, a flashback, or something just familiar to what has happened in their past. And stress can cause cardiovascular problems, make you at high risk for serious illness, weak immune system, and then stress can evolve into PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Child abuse is not something that should be taken lightly. It is something we can prevent from affecting a child, but usually that involves talking to somebody or going to therapy. But that is my speech on child abuse, the different kinds, and how it can affect a child.